Hi, I just thought I'd explain the transaction flow from a Salt account because I've been asked this many times. Now you can see here we have a 2 of 3 signer example, and it's important to realise that the underlying signers all hold a key shard to the one organisational account. This is not multi-sig, it's distributed MPC. So the organisational account only has one private key, and using decentralized key generation, that private key is never actually fully formed. However, the underlying signers can use their key shards to communicate with each other and send valid Ethereum transactions from the organisational account. And there's 3 participants in this transaction. There's the robo-signer, there's the human, and there's the bot. Now, I should actually say there's 3 participants in the account itself. Because it's a 2 of 3 signer example, you actually only need 2 underlying signers to form a valid transaction. Now, each underlying signer has a key shard. When the account was created, the underlying signers, using communication protocols, talked to each other and formed a valid account where each underlying signer had a key shard. It's really important to note here that there are no centralized servers. Salt does not run any centralized system to host key material. The key material is fully self-sovereign to the underlying signers, and those underlying signers are all within the organization itself. The robo-signer is an automated wallet signing solution that is set up when an organization enrolls in Salt. The human is simply a member of the organization that's been given access to the wallet, and the bot could be a bot that's automatically sweeping funds to DeFi. Of course, you don't have to have another bot. You could also have, 2 humans, etc. So that's kind of an overview of the account itself. Now, for this particular run through, let's talk about what happens when a human wants to propose a transaction to move funds to another Ethereum account. So, the first thing the human does is propose a transaction they would like to do to the smart contract. So how does this actually work? Well, using the tools provided at app.salt.space, the human can form a valid proposed payload and send that to the arbitration orchestration smart contract, and each Salt account has its own smart contract using a browser wallet. In this case, let's say they're using MetaMask. So they will propose the transaction that they would like to do. Now, app.salt.space up the top here is listening on that smart contract, sees the proposal, policy checks it, checks that it meets all the organisation's risk management guidelines, and they have been set prior, often when the organisation onboarded onto Salt, but they've been set prior. And then if app.salt.space says, hey, this transaction meets all the policy guidelines, it sends a signal to the robo-signer, and we use WebSockets, and tells it to participate in the transaction. And so what happens then is the robo-signer signs its share of the transaction, and the human signs its share of the transaction. Now remember, the human has been guided through the transaction flow by actually being logged in to app.salt.space. So now if we have a look at the smart contract, we have all that is required to form a valid transaction. We have a propose, and then we have 2 signing shares, and it's a 2 of 3 wallet. So now the last step to do is that, because app.salt.space is listening on the smart contract, it is now going to tell the robo-signer, and you can see down here using the WebSocket channel, it's going to tell the robo-signer it's time to combine and broadcast that transaction. And you can see that the robo-signer combines it into a valid Ethereum transaction, and then it will broadcast it to whatever the relevant EVM chain is. We support many EVM chains. In this particular flowchart shows 3, but our intention is to support many more than that. And you can see that it will just broadcast it to the relevant chain. Okay, hopefully that has explained the transaction flow and how a transaction would work using app.salt.space.